Bud Light no longer holding the #1 position as America's top beer. Now, none of this surprises us, now does it? We knew this was coming. It was quite evident. All you had to do was read those tea leaves. It took Wall Street a little while to catch up. Quite a while, about a month before any analyst was even willing to talk about it. You see, they don't like to get into these treacherous territories, and they don't like to say, hey, the company's not going to do well. That would be the parent company, Anheuser-Busch, because of the uprising, if you would, among the customer base. But it was pretty obvious, really right from the beginning, that this was a no-win scenario on both sides, by the way. Because those that are in favor of the LGBT community and think it was a great idea to have Dylan Mulvaney as an influencer advertising the product, well, they're not happy. And then believe me, you know what? The core customer that was out there drinking Bud Light, well, you're not happy either. Now, are you? Nor is Kid Rock, for that matter. So consequently, what we're seeing is the sort of unraveling of all of this, and people are looking for substitutes. Now, the beer industry overall has struggled for some time only because there are substitutes, right? A lot of people have moved to seltzers or to wine or all these other things that you could possibly drink, and so do you really need to go and drink that Bud Light, which I would argue, and I'm sorry for those of you that may have liked it, I would argue was never really the best product to begin with, right? It wasn't, at least for my taste, where I would choose to spend my money or what I would actually drink. So Bud Light had a lot of cards, if you would, stacked against it. And then it managed, via its VP of marketing, Alyssa Heinerschneid, and her boss, to totally ruin itself, losing some near $30 billion in the process. I want to point out that the stock actually did close a little bit higher today, $56.67 a share. Maybe investors are like, okay, like maybe the worst is over. I'm not so sure because if you look at the numbers here, what you're seeing is that things are actually getting worse for Bud Light. This just coming in. Sales fell the most they've ever fallen in the last week, down 24.6%. This is according to Nielsen Bump Consulting, 24.6%. On the other hand, the new #1 brand that's taken over, Modelo Especial, and is owned by Constellation Brands, its sales were up 10.2%. So they now have 7.3% of the market share nationwide, while what do you know? Oh, forgive me. They have 8.4% of the market share nationwide. That would be Modelo Especial by Constellation versus 7.3% from Bud Light. This is not a hard one to predict. I mean, this is what those ESG folks keep getting wrong. There's this desire, if you would, to implement this political correctness into our capitalist system. But, the two things don't always jive that well. And the reality is, if your goal is to make the most possible money for shareholders, then sure, maybe you want to expand your brand, maybe you want to, diversify your brand, et cetera. But you certainly don't want to alienate the core customers in your brand, which is exactly what they managed to do.